Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Been an extremely busy last couple of weeks for Jedd Fisch and the Washington Huskies, and we've been rolling and kind of just covering the commitments as they've come in, but there's been a lot of moving parts. Some of you guys in the comment section asking for kind of a recap of what's gone on with this Washington Huskies program over the last couple of weeks. So I figured the best way to tie a bow on the last couple of weeks for the Washington Huskies, give you guys my top 5 transfers for the Washington Huskies heading into that 2024 year. A lot of names that I want to talk about, a lot of names that I'm really excited about for this program heading into 2024, and a roster that I think will continue to go through some changes, right? That spring transfer portal window opens up after spring practice. Now, I'm thinking Jedd Fisch is going to get into this program, run through spring practice, sees what this roster looks like, and you're probably going to see Jedd Fisch in the Washington Huskies get aggressive after spring practice in the transfer portal as well. But as we sit right now, I want to give you guys my top 5 transfers. Really excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Washington Husky fans. This has been a program we've been talking a ton about over the last couple of weeks as Jedd Fisch has taken over this program. The amount of support, the amount of feedback, the amount of nice comments you guys have left, that stuff means the world. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear your top 5 transfers heading into that 2024 year in the comment section. We'll chop it up down there. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with probably my favorite transfer that the Washington Huskies brought in, and that was Jonah Coleman coming from Arizona. And I think he's just criminally underrated as a running back. I've spent a lot of time watching Jonah Coleman over the last couple of weeks, have some numbers from last season that I want to talk about. 25th best running back available in the portal. I don't even know if I could name 25 running backs better in the country than Jonah Coleman. You take a look at the numbers from 2023, which I will say match the film. You go back and watch Jonah Coleman, just put on some highlights. This is a guy that you want running the football for your team. 128 carries for 871 yards, averaged almost 7 yards per carry. And on top of that, caught 25 footballs for over 280 yards receiving. This is not just a pure running back. This is a guy that can get it done out of the backfield. Was a massive fan of how Jedd Fisch used Jonah Coleman, and you kind of look for that relationship to kind of foster for Jonah Coleman, who's only going into year 3 of his college football career. And to kind of dive into some more deeper numbers here, Jonah Coleman at 5'9", 225 pounds. This is a guy that low center of gravity, runs extremely hard. His contact balance is phenomenal, and that number is backed up by 5 yards per carry after contact. There are a lot of running backs across the country that don't even average 5 yards per carry, period. Jonah Coleman averaging that after contact, forced 46 missed tackles. And to kind of contextualize those numbers, you take a look at Dillon Johnson from last year, running back who was phenomenal for the Washington Huskies. Dillon Johnson only had 3 yards after contact per carry. And so that's kind of sheds some light on how good I think Jonah Coleman is. And that's not, to me, try to take away anything from what Dillon Johnson does. Obviously was playing banged up for the larger half of that back half of the season. More just highlighting how special I think Jonah Coleman can be for this Washington team. And you talk about a player that can steady the ship, a lot of moving parts for this Washington Huskies roster. Having a running back like Jonah Coleman, who you can just turn around and give him the football and let him go to work, is going to be massive for this team, especially going into the Big Ten. You talk about Big Ten running back. Jonah Coleman is a Big Ten running back. Next guy on the list, and this is QB1, and a guy that I think probably Jedd Fisch's most impressive job that he did was getting Will Rogers to stay committed to Washington. What better quarterback for all the moving parts and all the change that Washington has gone through, right? Not only a coaching change, but going to the Big Ten Conference. What a better quarterback, or what better quarterback could you have asked for than a quarterback that has 4 years of starting experience in the SEC, is second all-time in passing yards in that conference. You take a look at the numbers for Will Rogers. Not only has he played a lot of football, he's played a lot of football at an extremely high level. He's completed almost 70% of his passes for over 12,000 yards, 94 touchdowns to only 28 interceptions. You got some really young quarterbacks, so I'm extremely excited about coming up. But for year 2024, having Will Rogers come in, I think is absolutely massive. And you go back to Michael Penix. I'm not necessarily comparing Will Rogers to Michael Penix, but you talk about what made Michael Penix so special in that 2023 year. I think it largely came down to the experience. I mean, everything defenses were throwing at Michael Penix. Michael Penix has been around the block. He's seen that stuff. He is getting the ball out on time, accurately. Will Rogers has that level of experience in the SEC. So you look for Will Rogers, who I think fits Jedd Fisch and what he wants to do on offense extremely well. I think this is massive. This is a quarterback that's going to win you a lot of football games in the Big Ten in 2024. You talk about Jonah Coleman steadying the ship. I mean, you have a backfield that's going to steady the ship with Will Rogers and Jonah Coleman. Next guy I want to talk about, and the guy that committed to Kalen DeBoer but stuck with the Washington Huskies, and that's Drew Azzopardi coming from San Diego State. I mean, why do I think he's one of the more impactful transfers for the Washington Huskies? You lose two tackles who were phenomenal for Washington in 2023. A guy like Troy, I think he's going to be a top 20 pick in the NFL draft. And you replace him with a guy like Drew, who, you take a look at his numbers, started the last 6 games for San Diego State, 194 pass blocking opportunities, only gave up 1 sack and 9 total quarterback pressures. I think that is a stalwart tackle for the Washington Huskies heading into that 2024 year. And you look at the positions of value, right? Jedd Fisch goes out and retains Will Rogers. Jedd Fisch goes out and retains a guy like Drew Azzopardi, who a lot of programs wanted out of the transfer portal. Locking up those guys at positions of need and positions of importance was absolutely massive. I look for Drew to come in, kind of be a stalwart starting tackle for the Washington Huskies in 2024. Next guy I want to go to, and a guy that I am extremely excited about. Not only did you see Efesians Prysock play extremely good football in 2023 for Arizona, he's only going into year 3 again. So I think there's a lot of progression, a lot of meat left on the bone for a guy like Efesians Prysock following Jedd Fisch from Arizona to Washington. He's got all the traits you want, right? This was a guy that started every single game for the Arizona Wildcats last year, got his hands on a lot of footballs, faced 63 targets, only gave up 39 catches. He's battle-tested. In a Pac-12 conference last year that I think had the best passing attacks that you saw in all of college football, I'll say this, as a Michigan fan, you're not going to see that level of passing attacks in the Big Ten. So Efesians Prysock got it done at the Pac-12. He's certainly going to get it done in the Big Ten, but I think what's most exciting is this is a guy that at 6'4", 190, all the length, he's a smooth athlete. He's got all the potential in the world. And again, he's only going into year 3, so you're going to see a step from his play heading into that 2024 season. I think you might be looking at that true cornerback one. We all remember how impactful a guy like Jabbar Muhammad was for the Washington Huskies coming in the portal last year. And you might have found another one in Efesians Prysock coming over from Arizona. Really excited, not only for the player that he is, but the upside that he has for the Washington Huskies. Number 4 on the list, going to a guy at San Jose State who I really like. This is actually number 5. My counting, not great. Brian Parham. This was a guy, you go back and watch the film. I was hand up on this one, not too familiar with San Jose State. Had to go back and watch a little bit of Brian Parham. A little bit undersized at 5'11", 212 pounds. Rangy linebacker. You're talking about some serious speed, and you're talking about some serious instincts for a guy like Brian Parham. Had over 106 tackles, 28 run stops on the year for San Jose State last year. You talk about a stalwart at that linebacker position. A guy that you might be concerned about the size doesn't play undersized. He takes on blocks extremely well, is a very, very good tackler in space. He's a guy that I think fits the modern day linebacker position. You need linebackers who are athletic, who can play in space. You talk about Washington, where they struggled immensely on defense last year. It was tackling. They had over 170 missed tackles. Brian Parham at the linebacker spot with over 106 tackles to his name, only missed 7% of his tackles. This is a guy that's a sure tackler. He's very good in space, can go sideline to sideline, can go cover running backs in the flat, carry tight ends up the seam. He's checking a lot of boxes of what you want in a linebacker at the college football level. And yes, a little bit undersized, doesn't play undersized. I think you got another stalwart in the middle of this defense with Brian Parham. Now, you could go down the list and we could pull up this Washington class. I couldn't help myself. I'm going to give a few other shout outs for guys that I'm really excited about. I'm going to go down to Jeremiah Hunter a guy that's coming from Cal that Cal offense just flat out stunk. He was able to put up some numbers. What does it look like for Jeremiah Hunter coming and playing in this Jedd Fisch offense? We know the success that Jedd Fisch had at designing offenses for the Arizona Wildcats, a guy that I'm really excited for the Washington Huskies. I really like what Jedd Fisch has done, and specifically at the positions of premium, right? Quarterback, tackle, cornerback, wide receivers. He's doing a nice job just steadying the ship of this Washington Huskies program. Again, a program that we're going to be talking a lot about in spring practice. And we're probably going to be talking a lot about as that transfer portal window opens up after spring practice as well. We'll continue to keep you guys updated. Appreciate you guys more than you know for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.